A jealous homeless boy secretly throws a billionaire's son into a bathtub. But the shocking truth behind his actions reveals a heartbreaking story that changes everyone's life forever. First, subscribe. The rain had been falling for hours. Cold drops tapped against the tall iron gates of the Hargrave mansion, sliding slowly down the black metal bars like quiet tears. The night was heavy with wind, and the streets outside the estate were almost empty. Streetlights flickered in the distance, casting pale yellow pools of light on the wet pavement. Across the road, beneath a broken bus stop roof, a thin boy stood shivering. His name was Leo. He was only 14 years old, but life had already carved deep lines of exhaustion across his young face. His clothes were soaked, clinging to his small frame. The sleeves of his jacket were torn, and his shoes were so worn that water slipped easily through the cracks. Leo wrapped his arms tightly around himself, trying to trap what little warmth his body had left. He hadn't eaten since yesterday. His stomach twisted with hunger, and every breath carried the sharp chill of the rain-filled air. But Leo barely noticed the cold anymore. His eyes were fixed on something far more painful than the storm. Across the massive driveway stood the Hargrave mansion. The house looked like something from another world, 3 stories tall, glowing with warm golden light from hundreds of windows. Tall pillars framed the entrance, and perfectly trimmed gardens stretched across the property like a painting. Inside those walls, life looked easy. Through one large window, Leo could see movement. A little boy was running across the living room floor, laughing loudly as he chased a toy car. Bright lights filled the room. Soft music played somewhere inside, and the sound of joyful laughter slipped faintly through the glass. The boy was Ethan Hargrave, the billionaire's only son. He wore soft pajamas and bright socks as he ran across a thick, white carpet, his small voice echoing with happiness. A housekeeper gently reminded him not to run too fast, but Ethan only laughed harder. Warmth, safety, a home. Leo stared through the rain-soaked darkness, watching the life he had never known. For a moment, something deep inside him twisted painfully. Why did some children have everything, while others had nothing? His hands tightened slowly into fists. That should have been my life. The thought slipped into his mind quietly, but once it appeared, it refused to leave. Leo remembered a time when things had been different, when his mother was still alive, when his little brother used to laugh the same way Ethan was laughing now. But those memories felt far away now, like dreams that belonged to someone else. The wind blew harder, sending another wave of rain across the empty street. Leo shivered again, but he didn't move. His eyes stayed locked on the glowing mansion window. Inside, Ethan's father walked into the room. Daniel Hargrave, one of the richest men in the world. He lifted Ethan into his arms and spun him around playfully. The little boy burst into laughter again, holding tightly onto his father's shoulders. Leo watched them silently, father and son. Warm lights, perfect life. Something dark began to grow quietly inside his chest. Not just sadness, not just pain, jealousy. A slow, bitter feeling that wrapped around his heart like cold iron. Leo stepped closer to the mansion gate, rain dripping from his hair onto the pavement below. The warmth inside that house felt impossibly close, yet completely out of reach. And in that lonely moment, a dangerous thought quietly began to form. If life had never been fair to him, then why should it be fair to anyone else? The rain continued to fall as Leo stood there in silence, watching the happy family through the glowing window. Sometimes jealousy is not born from hate, but from a heart that has suffered too much pain. The rain had slowed to a gentle drizzle, but the cold night air still clung to the streets. Leo remained near the tall iron gates, his thin figure barely visible under the dim streetlight. Water dripped slowly from his hair onto his worn jacket. His stomach ached with hunger, but he had learned long ago how to ignore it. Across the driveway, warm golden lights still glowed inside the Hargrave mansion. Inside the house, Ethan's laughter echoed again. The young boy had been playing with his toy car near the large window when something outside caught his attention. At first, he thought it was just a shadow moving near the gate. But when he looked closer, he saw a boy standing there in the rain. A boy about his age. Ethan tilted his head with curiosity. He had never seen someone standing outside their gate like that before. Without thinking much about it, he gently placed his toy car on the floor and walked toward the front door. The housekeeper was busy in another room, and the security guard at the far gate had stepped away for a moment. The large door opened slowly. A warm wave of light spilled onto the driveway. Leo noticed the door opening and quickly looked away, ready to leave. But before he could move, a small voice called out, "Hey!" Leo froze. Ethan stepped outside, wearing soft slippers and a warm sweater. The cold night air made him shiver slightly, but curiosity pushed him forward. He walked a little closer to the gate, looking at Leo carefully. Up close, Ethan could see the rain-soaked clothes, the tired eyes, and the trembling hands. "Are you okay?" Ethan asked gently. Leo said nothing. His eyes stayed fixed on the ground. Ethan looked around for a moment, then ran back inside the house. Leo watched him disappear through the door and felt a strange mix of relief and embarrassment. But a minute later, Ethan returned. This time he carried something in his hands. A small plate with bread and fruit. He carefully walked to the gate and held it out through the bars. "You look hungry," Ethan said kindly. "You can have this." Leo stared at the food. The smell alone made his stomach tighten painfully. For a moment, his hand almost reached forward. But then something else rose inside him. Bride. Pain. Humiliation. Was he really standing here like a beggar? Why did this boy have everything and still feel sorry for him? "I don't need his pity." Leo slowly stepped back from the gate. "I'm not hungry," he said quietly, though his voice sounded weak. Ethan looked confused. "But you're shaking," he said softly. "It's really cold. You can take it." Leo's jaw tightened. The kindness in Ethan's voice didn't comfort him. Instead, it felt like a spotlight shining on everything he had lost. A warm house, family, a normal life. Leo turned his face away. "Just go inside," he muttered. Ethan hesitated, still holding the plate of food through the gate. For the first time, the cheerful boy seemed unsure of what to do. "Did I say something wrong?" he asked quietly. Leo didn't answer. The silence between them grew heavier than the rain. Two boys stood only a few feet apart, yet their worlds could not have been further away. Finally, Ethan slowly pulled the plate back. "I just wanted to help," he said softly. Leo remained still, staring into the dark street beyond the gate. Kindness should have felt warm. So why did it hurt so much? The mansion door slowly closed behind Ethan, and the golden light disappeared again. Leo stood alone in the cold night once more, and somewhere deep inside his heart, the quiet seed of jealousy began to grow stronger. Sometimes kindness offered to a wounded heart can feel like a reminder of everything it has lost. The rain stopped the next morning, but the cold stayed in the air. Across the street from the Hargrave mansion, Leo returned to the same quiet corner near the iron gates. The pavement was still wet, reflecting the bright morning sunlight like broken glass. He had spent the night under an old bus stop roof not far away. Sleep came in short, uncomfortable moments, interrupted by the cold and the rumbling of his empty stomach. But as soon as the sun rose, Leo walked back. Back to the mansion. Back to the large glowing windows where life looked warm and perfect. From behind a tall tree near the gate, Leo quietly watched the house. Inside the front garden, Ethan ran across the grass chasing a bright red ball. His laughter floated through the calm morning air. A housekeeper followed him carefully, smiling as she reminded him not to run too close to the fountain. Ethan didn't listen. He was too busy being a child. Leo's eyes followed every movement. The way Ethan laughed freely. The way the adults around him watched with gentle patience. The way no one seemed worried about where the next meal would come from. For a moment, Leo closed his eyes. A memory flashed through his mind. A small apartment, tiny kitchen, his mother humming softly while cooking something simple on the stove. His little brother sitting on the floor playing with a plastic truck. They had not been rich, but they had been together. Leo slowly opened his eyes again, and the memory faded like smoke. Across the garden, Ethan's father stepped outside. Daniel Hargrave looked tall and confident in his dark suit as he walked toward his son. Ethan immediately ran into his arms, laughing as Daniel lifted him easily off the ground. Father and son. Leo's chest tightened. How many nights had he wished someone would lift him like that again? Why did they get to keep their family when mine was taken away? The thought burned quietly in his mind. For the next few days, Leo returned again and again. He watched Ethan leave the house in the morning, stepping into a sleek black car that took him to school. He watched him return in the afternoon with new toys and stories to tell his father. One evening, Leo saw Ethan riding a brand new bicycle across the driveway, his face glowing with excitement. Daniel ran beside him, steadying the bike with one hand. "Don't worry," Daniel laughed. "I'm right here." Leo stood hidden behind the gate, gripping the cold iron bars. The sound of Ethan's laughter echoed again. A warm home, a loving father, safety, everything Leo once had and lost. A quiet question slipped into his mind. Why did some people get second chances, while others were left with nothing? The longer he watched, the heavier the feeling inside his chest became. It wasn't just sadness anymore. It was something darker, something sharper. Jealousy. The kind of jealousy that grows slowly, feeding on every moment of happiness it sees. Leo looked at the mansion again, his eyes lingering on the glowing windows. Somewhere inside that warm house, Ethan was laughing again. And outside the gates, Leo stood alone. The distance between their lives felt impossible to cross. But sometimes, when pain grows too heavy, it begins to change the way a person sees the world. Jealousy often grows where pain has been left to heal alone. The afternoon sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the quiet street outside the Hargrave mansion. For days, Leo had returned to the same place near the tall iron gates, watching the life inside those walls. The mansion had become a silent movie he could not stop observing: warm lights, laughter, and a life that felt impossibly distant from his own. But that afternoon, something was different. Near the side of the property, a service door stood slightly open. It was a door used by the house staff, usually kept locked and carefully monitored. But today, someone had forgotten to close it completely. The wind pushed it open just enough to reveal a narrow entrance into the mansion. Leo noticed it immediately. He stood very still across the street, his heart suddenly beating faster. No guards nearby, no staff watching, just an open door waiting. For a moment, Leo hesitated. He had never stepped inside a place like this before. From the outside, the mansion looked like another world. A world meant for people with money, power, and comfort. Not for someone like him, but curiosity pulled at him. Slowly, carefully, Leo crossed the street. Each step felt heavier than the last. The quiet neighborhood seemed to hold its breath as he approached the door. His worn shoes made almost no sound against the stone pathway. He reached the open door and paused. Warm air drifted from inside the house, carrying the soft scent of fresh food and polished wood. The warmth alone felt strange against his cold skin. Leo glanced behind him one last time. No one was there. Then he stepped inside. The moment he crossed the doorway, the world changed. The floors beneath his feet were smooth white marble, shining softly under golden lights hanging from the ceiling. Tall paintings lined the walls, and a grand staircase curved upward like something from a palace. The air felt calm, safe. Leo slowly walked forward, looking around with wide eyes. He had never seen anything so beautiful. Every room looked warm and perfect. Soft carpets, elegant furniture, glowing lamps. Even the silence inside the house felt peaceful. For a brief moment, something gentle touched his heart. What would it feel like to live in a place like this? Maybe, just for one day, I could belong here. But the thought faded quickly, because then he heard a familiar voice. Laughter. Leo froze. The sound came from upstairs. Slowly, he looked toward the staircase. At the top of the stairs stood Ethan. The young boy was sitting on the floor of the hallway, surrounded by colorful toys. A small toy train moved slowly along its track while Ethan watched with excitement. He was alone. No housekeeper. No father. Nearby. Just Ethan happily playing in his safe, beautiful home. Leo's chest tightened again. All the warmth he had felt a moment ago suddenly turned cold. The memories of his own broken past rushed back like a storm. His small apartment. His mother's tired smile. The day everything had been taken away. And here was Ethan, living the life Leo believed should have been his. The jealousy that had been quietly growing inside Leo's heart suddenly felt stronger than ever. He stepped slowly toward the stairs, his eyes never leaving the boy upstairs. One step, then another. The quiet house seemed to hold a heavy silence around him. What could possibly go wrong when jealousy begins to guide a wounded heart? Leo reached the bottom of the staircase and looked up again at Ethan. The moment that would change both of their lives had quietly begun. Sometimes one small decision, made in pain, can change everything forever. The mansion was quiet, too quiet. Leo slowly climbed the staircase, each step making his heart pound louder in his chest. The soft carpet beneath his feet muted his footsteps, but inside his mind everything felt chaotic. At the top of the stairs, Ethan sat on the floor of the hallway, completely lost in his game. The small toy train moved in circles along the plastic track, its tiny wheels clicking softly. Ethan smiled to himself, gently pushing the train forward. He had no idea someone was behind him. Leo stood at the end of the hallway, watching. For a moment, he just stared at the boy. Ethan looked so small, so safe, so happy. Everything Leo had once been, before life broke apart. A strange feeling twisted inside Leo's chest again. It was not just jealousy anymore. It was anger. Anger at the world. Anger at fate. Anger at the unfairness of life itself. Why did this boy get everything? Why did Leo have nothing? The questions echoed inside his mind like thunder. Leo stepped closer. The floor creaked slightly. Ethan looked. For a brief moment, surprise crossed his face. But then he recognized Leo. "You're the boy from the gate," Ethan said happily. He stood up quickly. "I tried to give you food before. Are you okay now?" His voice carried the same innocent kindness as before. But to Leo, that kindness felt unbearable. It reminded him again of everything he lacked. Everything he had lost. "Stop looking at me like that." Leo's hands slowly clenched into fists. Ethan noticed the tension in his face. "Do you want to see my toys?" Ethan asked softly. "My dad just bought this train yesterday." Leo didn't answer. His breathing had grown heavier. Something dark was clouding his thoughts. Before he even fully understood what he was doing, Leo suddenly grabbed Ethan's arm. The small boy gasped in surprise. "Hey, what are you?" Leo pulled him toward the nearby bathroom down the hallway. The door swung open. Inside, warm light reflected across white marble tiles. A large bathtub sat against the wall, already filled halfway with water. The housekeeper must have been preparing Ethan's bath earlier. Ethan tried to pull away, confused and scared. "Wait, what are you doing?" But Leo's grip tightened. In one sudden, reckless moment, he pushed Ethan forward. The small boy fell into the bathtub with a loud splash. Water surged over the sides, spilling onto the floor. Ethan gasped loudly as the cold water surrounded him. "Help!" he cried, struggling to sit up. His small hands slipped against the smooth surface of the tub as panic spread across his face. Water splashed wildly as he tried to climb out. Leo stood frozen near the doorway. The sound of Ethan's frightened cries echoed through the bathroom. "Help! Please!" The moment felt unreal. Leo's chest rose and fell rapidly as he stared at the struggling boy. What had he just done? The anger that had driven him only seconds earlier suddenly vanished, replaced by something far heavier. Fear. Guilt. Shock. "I didn't mean to go this far." Ethan coughed, water splashing around him as he tried desperately to pull himself out of the tub. Panic filled the room like a storm. Leo's mind raced wildly. Had his jealousy just turned into something much worse? For a long second, he couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't breathe, because sometimes a single moment of anger can lead to a mistake that changes everything forever. And Leo was only now beginning to understand the weight of what he had done. A heart controlled by anger can make choices the soul will regret forever. The bathroom filled with the sound of splashing water and frightened cries. Ethan struggled inside the bathtub, his small hands slipping against the smooth porcelain as water sloshed over the edges. His face was pale with fear, and every movement sent waves across the floor. "Help! Please!" The sound cut through the air like a knife. Leo stood frozen at the doorway, staring at the scene in front of him. Only seconds ago, anger had burned through his chest. But now that anger was gone, replaced by something much heavier. Reality. Ethan coughed again, water splashing into his face as he tried to push himself upright. That sound, those desperate gasps, hit Leo like a memory crashing into his mind. Suddenly the bathroom around him seemed to fade. Another room appeared in his thoughts. A smaller bathroom, old cracked tiles, dim yellow light flickering above the sink, and a tiny boy sitting in a bathtub. His little brother. Leo's breathing became uneven as the memory tightened around his chest. Years ago, there had been laughter in that small apartment. His little brother had loved playing with toy boats in the bathwater. Leo had been watching him that day too, just like now. But things had gone wrong so quickly. A slip, a splash, panic. Leo remembered the sound of his brother struggling, the frantic movement of water, the fear in his small voice calling his name. Leo had tried to pull him out. He had tried, but he had been too late. The memory shattered through Leo's mind like broken glass. Back in the present, Ethan slipped again in the tub, coughing loudly. Leo suddenly rushed forward. "No, no, no." He grabbed Ethan under the arms and quickly pulled him out of the bathtub. Water poured onto the floor as the boy collapsed against Leo's chest, shaking and crying. "It's okay. It's okay," Leo said, though his own voice trembled. Ethan clung to him, frightened and confused. Leo sank down onto the bathroom floor, still holding the boy tightly. Tears suddenly filled his eyes. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Ethan looked up at him, still catching his breath. "Why did you do that?" the young boy asked quietly. Leo couldn't answer right away. His shoulders shook as the weight of everything inside him finally broke free. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he said through tears. "I swear I didn't." He wiped his face with trembling hands. "My little brother," Leo whispered. The words felt heavy as they left his mouth. He died in a bathtub." The room fell silent. Leo's voice cracked as he continued. "I was watching him that day. My mom asked me to keep an eye on him while she went to answer the door." His eyes filled with pain. "He slipped in the water, and I couldn't save him." The guilt had followed Leo every single day since. The feeling that he had failed, that he should have done something faster, something better. "When I saw you," Leo said quietly, looking at Ethan, "it reminded me of him." Ethan listened silently. "I wasn't really angry at you," Leo continued, his voice soft and broken. "I was angry at myself. I never forgave myself for losing him." Leo lowered his head. All the jealousy, all the bitterness, it had come from the same place. Pain, unhealed grief that had lived inside his heart for years. But now, sitting there on the cold bathroom floor, holding a frightened child in his arms, Leo realized something terrifying. He had almost repeated the same tragedy he had been trying to escape. Sometimes the deepest pain hides behind actions we barely understand. And in that moment, Leo finally saw the truth of what had been living inside him all along. Unhealed pain can quietly control a heart until the truth is finally faced. The bathroom door suddenly burst open. Heavy footsteps rushed down the hallway as security guards stormed inside the room. The sound of water dripping onto the marble floor echoed through the tense silence. One of the guards immediately stepped forward. "Sir, step away from the child," he ordered sharply. Leo froze. Ethan was still sitting beside him on the wet floor, breathing unevenly but safe now. Water soaked both of their clothes, and Leo's hands were still trembling from everything that had just happened. Within seconds, another figure appeared in the doorway. Daniel Hargrave, the billionaire father, stood there, his tall figure filling the room with a powerful presence. His sharp eyes quickly scanned the scene, the flooded bathroom floor, his frightened son, and the unfamiliar boy kneeling beside him. His face changed instantly. "Ethan!" Daniel rushed forward and pulled his son into his arms. "Are you okay?" he asked urgently, checking the boy's face and shoulders. "I'm okay," Ethan said softly, still shaken. "I just slipped into the tub." But Daniel's eyes had already shifted toward Leo. Cold anger filled his expression. "Who is this boy?" he demanded. Two security guards quickly grabbed Leo by the arms and pulled him to his feet. Leo didn't resist. His head hung low, and his wet hair clung to his face. Daniel stepped closer. The expensive fabric of his suit was spotless, his posture strong and controlled. But behind his calm voice, there was fury. "Explain," he said firmly. The guards began to speak, but Leo suddenly found his voice. "It was me." The words came out quietly. "I pushed him." The room fell silent. Daniel's jaw tightened. For a brief moment, the air felt dangerously still. A father's worst fear had almost become real. "How dare you?" Daniel said, his voice sharp with anger. Ethan looked between them nervously, but Leo didn't defend himself. Instead, he lowered his eyes and spoke again. "I didn't mean to hurt him," he whispered. Tears slowly formed in his eyes. "I just lost control." Daniel stared at him, studying the boy carefully for the first time. Leo looked small. Too small to carry the kind of anger Daniel expected from someone who would harm a child. His clothes were torn, his hands were shaking, and his face was filled with regret. "What happened?" Daniel asked again, this time quieter. Leo swallowed hard. Then he told them everything. About the nights spent sleeping on cold streets. About watching the mansion from outside the gates. About the jealousy that had slowly grown inside him. And finally, about his little brother. "My brother died in a bathtub," Leo said softly. "I was supposed to be watching him." His voice trembled as he spoke. "I tried to save him, but I couldn't." The words hung heavily in the air. For a moment, no one spoke. Daniel's anger slowly began to fade, replaced by something unexpected: understanding. The boy standing in front of him was not a monster. He was a broken child carrying more pain than most adults ever faced. Daniel looked down at his son, who was now calm in his arms. Then he looked back at Leo. This boy didn't need punishment. He needed help. The realization softened Daniel's expression. Sometimes the truth behind a terrible mistake is far more painful than the mistake itself. And in that quiet moment, Daniel understood that Leo's actions had not come from cruelty, but from a heart that had never healed. When we look beyond anger, we sometimes discover a wounded heart asking for help. The mansion was quiet now, the echoes of splashing water replaced by a tense, soft silence. Daniel stood in the middle of the bathroom, holding his son close, his eyes still fixed on Leo. The boy's small frame trembled with cold and fear, soaked from head to toe, but his tears had begun to fade into quiet exhaustion. Daniel's gaze softened. The anger that had burned so fiercely only moments ago was gone, replaced by something heavier: compassion. "You don't have to be afraid," Daniel said gently. "No one here is going to hurt you." Leo's head remained lowered, but he listened, his body stiff and uncertain. "I know what it's like to feel alone," Daniel continued, "and I know what it's like to carry a pain that seems too heavy for a child to bear." Ethan, still wrapped in his father's arms, peeked over and looked at Leo. His small hand reached out tentatively. "I forgive you," he whispered softly. Leo blinked, startled. "Forgive me? After everything?" But the words were gentle. "Pure." And for the first time in years, the tight knot of guilt in Leo's chest loosened even slightly. Daniel guided Leo to a towel, helping him dry off as Ethan stayed nearby, offering a shy smile. Then Daniel spoke again, this time with quiet certainty. "You don't have to return to the streets, Leo. Not today. Not ever again." He extended his hand, an invitation. Leo hesitated, glancing down at the wet floor, then finally reached out. Their hands met, a simple connection that carried the weight of trust being slowly rebuilt. "Come live with us," Daniel said. "We'll help you. Shelter, food, care, therapy if you need it. A second chance at life." The words washed over Leo like sunlight breaking through clouds. Warmth he hadn't felt in years began to bloom inside him. Slowly, a small, genuine smile appeared on his face. Ethan stepped closer and offered his hand again. "Friends?" he asked. Leo looked at him, then nodded. "Friends," he whispered, his voice breaking. The three of them stood together in the flooded bathroom, but it no longer felt cold or frightening. For the first time, Leo realized that life could hold something more than pain and loneliness. Days turned into weeks. Leo learned to sleep in a warm bed again. He ate meals without fear of them disappearing. And in the evenings, he and Ethan would sit on the mansion's wide, sunlit porch, talking quietly, sharing small victories, and slowly learning to trust again. Daniel watched them both with a quiet smile. The moment in the bathroom, the fear, the chaos, the tears, had not only revealed a broken boy in need of help, but also offered a chance for healing for his own son. Could a single act of forgiveness truly change two lives forever? It seems it can if hearts are willing to open. And in that quiet mansion, laughter began to echo again. Gentle, unhurried, full of life, and full of hope. Sometimes the smallest act of understanding can turn tragedy into a second chance.